Egypt dispatches its 18th humanitarian aid convoy to Gaza. Qatar describes the latest Gaza ceasefire proposal as the best available option. And the Russian and American presidents support ongoing direct talks between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations.
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت سنتين ونص صارت نص.
You're watching Q News at 4 with me, Henny Saif, and in the news today, Egypt has dispatched its 18th humanitarian aid convoy to Gaza through the Rafah crossing as part of ongoing efforts to support Palestinians amid a worsening humanitarian crisis. The convoy, under the Zed al-Izzah Provision of Honor from Egypt to Gaza initiative, includes dozens of trucks carrying essential food supplies, medical items and relief materials, totaling around 2,400 tons. Since the crisis began, the Egyptian Red Crescent has coordinated nearly 36,000 aid trucks, delivering about 500,000 tons of relief with the help of 35,000 volunteers. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati has exchanged views on Middle East developments with his Dutch counterpart, Casper Vlietekamp. Abdulati requested Dutch support within the EU to hold Gaza's humanitarian disaster and highlighted preparations for an international recovery conference. The Dutch Foreign Minister praised Egypt's efforts for a Gaza ceasefire, humanitarian aid and reconstruction. The Egyptian Foreign Minister stressed the Netherlands' legal duty to protect Egypt's diplomatic mission after an attack on its embassy in The Hague, urging preventative measures. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has urged the international community to take firm, concrete action to halt Israel's war against the Palestinian state. It warned of grave consequences for plans to fully reoccupy historic Gaza City, risking forced displacement of over 900,000 residents and widespread destruction. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry condemned this as an assault on Palestinian sovereignty and civilians, aiming to render Gaza uninhabitable. It praised Egyptian, Qatari and US efforts towards a lasting ceasefire, humanitarian aid, access, reconstruction, and restoring legitimate Palestinian governance. Cairo intensifies mediation efforts with Doha and Washington, aiming for a sustainable ceasefire, detainee release, Israeli withdrawal, and unhindered humanitarian aid to Gaza amid ongoing tensions.
Cairo, alongside Doha and Washington, continues to press Hamas and Israel back to indirect talks, with Egypt and Qatar reaffirming their commitment to intensify diplomacy and overcome obstacles. Egyptian mediation is centered on a comprehensive, sustainable ceasefire tied to the release of detainees, Israeli withdrawal, and an immediate surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Egypt's role goes beyond shuttle diplomacy to practical action. Cairo has stressed that aid must flow without obstruction and crossings must operate at scale, underscoring Egypt's humanitarian responsibility toward the Palestinians. Mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and the United States are coordinating closely, with Cairo leveraging its channels to both sides despite setbacks and battlefield tensions. Egypt's stated priority remains a permanent ceasefire and Gaza's reconstruction, while rejecting any arrangements that restrict Palestinian movement or block relief operations. In a significant move, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa visited Egypt for high-level talks. He traveled with Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati to the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing, where they toured logistical hubs and met officials managing aid. From in front of Rafah border crossing, the Egyptian Foreign Minister stressed that Gaza must be flooded with urgent assistance without Israeli obstacles, aligning Cairo's humanitarian push with its diplomatic mediation. Egypt and its partners continue circulating proposals, pressing for a deal that couples calm with measures to ease suffering in Gaza and restore stability.
The Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesperson has described the latest Gaza ceasefire proposal as the best available option, noting Hamas's recent response aligns closely, about 98%, with what Israel had previously accepted. He added that the proposal outlines a path towards a permanent ceasefire, though no fixed timeline exists for Israel's reply. The Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesperson stated that while both parties have committed to implementing the agreement, there are no concrete guarantees on the ground. He added that Qatar hopes for a swift and positive Israeli response to advance peace efforts and humanitarian relief in Gaza. Israeli media has reported that Israel is evaluating Hamas's response and ways to improve the release of living detainees. This follows Hamas and other Palestinian factions' acceptance of an Egyptian-Qatari ceasefire proposal, which includes phased release of Israeli detainees and remains. The plan, prompted by devastating Israeli attacks causing tens of thousands of casualties and mass displacement in Gaza, calls for a 60-day truce, detainee exchanges, Israeli troop redeployment, and expanded humanitarian aid, aiming for a comprehensive, lasting solution to protect Gaza's civilians. And for more on this, we now move to Hela Al-Hamalawi in our newsroom. Hela.
Thank you so much, Hani. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the political science professor and specialist in regional and international security, Dr. Ahmed Al-Shahat. Welcome to Q News, Dr. Ahmed. Now, how significant is Egypt's 18th aid convoy in alleviating Gaza's humanitarian crisis? What does it reveal about Cairo's long-term strategy towards Gaza?
Our audience. I see that Cairo is working on different tracks and courses. Humanitarian one to prevent the crisis from deepening further, and trying to we are also refusing the forced migration. It is not the solution. We are trying to reach a two-state solution. In the same context, the Egyptian state is moving as an intermediary from the beginning of the war up to this moment. We're trying to preserve the negotiation status as it is, like you saw in our recent suggestion. We're trying to hold meetings with representatives from Hamas. We're trying to shape a unified Palestinian stance on the matter to oppose the Israeli aggression which take place in a methodical manner. This is a genocide that we see, and the pictures and videos from there had a great impact on the Western governments and the people in the West. It helped expose the Israeli aggression and the rabidness and extreme force they use. We're now trying to shape a unified Arabic movement. We're trying to solidify the international initiative which led to European nations who were supporting Israel to announce their intent to recognize the Palestinian state. These are different tracks and courses that are laid by intermediaries who are trying to limit the damages of the crisis.
So, Dr. Ahmed, what might Egypt's proposed recovery conference achieve? How could it shape post-war reconstruction and governance in Gaza?
The reconstruction plan. It was an on-the-ground idea, away from all. We were trying away from all mottos and slogans. We were trying to propose a plan that would support the people on the ground. We will try to post police officers who were trained in Cairo. Our stance was lenient. We are trying to hand them over the power in Gaza after the war, those police officers trained that we spoke of. We are now talking about the reconstruction conference that's about to be held. Egypt will take it upon itself to hold Israel liable of this genocidal war. They will be responsible for the devastation they committed, and unfortunately the high toll of damage that was done there in Palestine cannot be held by a single state. States must collaborate in offering their support. The international community must be faced with its huge responsibility to solidify this plan on the ground.
So given that the response of Hamas aligns with 98% of Israel's earlier position, what are the key sticking points preventing immediate agreement on a permanent ceasefire?
That the agreement or the proposal that was proposed, it's based on Witkoff's previous proposal. We condemn the Israeli practices and how they alienate with continuing the war. Hamas hastily declared that it agrees about the stance of Egypt and Qatar and their proposal, which cuts the way on Israel's intent to continue the aggression. But in the reality, the inputs are now different. Unfortunately, the Gaza Strip is almost occupied. The right-wing fanatics are still effective in Israel. They hinder all peace proposals and try to force migrate the people of Gaza. They are trying now to push an all-out military operation to force migrate the people of Gaza and occupy the whole of the Gaza Strip. In the same context, the Egyptian state and the Qatari state are trying to preserve the negotiation status. They are trying to issue an agreement that a ceasefire must be upheld for 60 days, while Israel, on the other hand, is trying to not adhere to this. So it's now on the international community and other key players to try to put pressure on Israel to accept, so that we can be sure that the warring status will not return. And America can do so, if they intend to, of course.
Well, that was Dr. Ahmed Al-Shahat joining us from Cairo. Dr. Ahmed is political science professor and specialist in regional and international security. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And now we go back to Hani Saif in our studio. To you, Hani.
Thank you, Hala. Jordan's King Abdullah II has stressed the urgent need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, firmly rejecting Israel's plans to expand its influence in the West Bank. He also underscored that Syria's security and stability remain a shared priority for both Jordan and Lebanon, highlighting the kingdom's steadfast stance on regional peace and sovereignty. The UN Human Rights Office has stated that Israel allows limited aid into Gaza, insufficient to prevent widespread starvation. The UN Human Rights Office spokesperson attributed the starvation risk directly to Israel's blockade policy. Since May 27th, more than 1,850 Palestinians seeking aid were killed, mostly by Israeli military action, including more than 1,020 near Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites and more than 830 along supply routes. That comes as Israel denies causing hunger, but admits some troops firing near aid sites. Palestinian media has reported that 40 people were killed and several injured in Israeli airstrikes across Gaza since dawn, including 8 aid recipients. Strikes targeted Abu Sharia in Gaza City's As-Sayra neighborhood and displaced persons tents in Khan Yunis, killing 8. 2 more died near Netzarim while waiting for aid. The ongoing devastation has resulted in over 210,000 dead or wounded, mostly women and children, more than 9,000 missing, massive displacement, famine, and widespread destruction. Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has climbed to over 62,000 and over 156,500 were wounded. Gaza-based health authorities have reported that Israeli military operations in Gaza had killed 60 Palestinians and injured 343 others in the past 24 hours alone. Moving on to Armenia, where the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has arrived in Yerevan on an official 2-day visit at the invitation of Armenia's Prime Minister. Welcomed by the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Pezeshkian will hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and meet Armenia's president. The visit includes signing cooperation agreements, engaging with scholars of Iranian studies, addressing the Iranian community in Armenia, and attending a joint business forum aimed at strengthening bilateral economic and cultural ties. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he hopes Russian President Vladimir Putin will be good, but warned of a rough situation if not. He suggested Ukraine erred by seeking NATO membership, adding Putin may not want a deal. Trump predicted Ukraine could lose significant land, while Europe might deploy forces, though U.S. troops will not. He said future security may take a form other than NATO, stressing Ukraine's role as a buffer between Russia and Europe.
Because of what's happened, massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want change are the machines. For all of the
Russian aide Yuri Ushakov has reported that during a phone call, Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump expressed mutual support for ongoing direct talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations. Initiated by Trump after his White House meetings with Zelensky and European leaders, the discussion included the possibility of elevating the level of negotiators. Ushakov described the call as frank and constructive, highlighting Putin and Trump's commitment to maintain close communication on Ukraine and other key international and bilateral issues. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has revealed that U.S. President Donald Trump proposed a meeting between Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin, with hopes for a subsequent trilateral summit including Trump. Rubio emphasized that while a peace deal isn't guaranteed, the willingness of Putin to meet Zelensky marks significant progress after years of no dialogue. He also noted ongoing U.S. coordination with European and other countries to establish security guarantees for Ukraine, signaling a cautious but hopeful step towards resolving the conflict.
Which have an impact on what one side views as leverage or the other. So that's the reality of.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that the recent U.S.-Russia-Alaska summit showed U.S. President Donald Trump and his team genuinely seek a long-term, sustainable peace in Ukraine. Lavrov described the Putin-Trump meeting atmosphere as very good. Lavrov contrasted the U.S. approach with Europe's, criticizing European leaders for focusing solely on ceasefire demands while continuing to supply weapons to Ukraine. He emphasized that the U.S. aims for a reliable peace, whereas Europe's stance remains centered on military support post-ceasefire. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that security guarantees for Kiev will likely be finalized within 10 days. After meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump and European leaders, Zelensky said partners will officially outline these guarantees soon, alongside progress on regional issues tied to a potential peace deal with Russia. Reports indicate Ukraine plans to purchase $100 billion in U.S. arms, funded by Europe, and sign a $50 billion drone production deal with Ukrainian firms as part of securing U.S. security assurances. Finland's President Alexander Stubb has said that security guarantees for Ukraine could be finalized within a week following talks between European leaders, US President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington. Stubb expressed skepticism about Russian President Putin's trustworthiness and questioned whether Putin would have the courage to meet with Trump and Zelensky. The high-level meeting aimed to explore peace prospects between Russia and Ukraine. Trump described the discussions as very good and announced initial steps to arrange a direct meeting between Putin and Zelensky.
Voisi toivoa, että trilateraalikokous olisikin hyvin nopeasti sen jälkeen. Mutta jälleen kerran se ehkä asia, joka tuo sellaisen pienen skeptisyyden tähän on Putinin sitoutuminen.
China's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning has said that China reaffirmed its commitment to supporting a political resolution of the Ukraine crisis. Speaking at a press briefing, she stressed that China neither created the conflict nor is a party to it, yet has consistently upheld an objective and impartial stance. Since the outset, China has urged peace, promoted dialogue, and expressed readiness to cooperate with the international community in facilitating a political settlement aligned with the will of the parties concerned. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has stressed that the EU is striving to end the fighting in Ukraine. She noted that recent talks in Washington provided Kiev with strong security assurances, reflecting continued transatlantic commitment to Ukraine's defense and sovereignty. Von der Leyen emphasized Europe's determination to pursue peace while ensuring Ukraine receives the necessary support to resist aggression and safeguard its future.
To fill up again the Ukraine facility.
French President Emmanuel Macron has warned that if peace negotiations with Ukraine fail, harsher sanctions on Russia will be necessary. That came after intensive talks at the White House with US President Donald Trump, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, and European leaders. Macron emphasized the urgency of a trilateral meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin, Zelensky, and Trump to secure stability and end the conflict. Macron stressed Europe's commitment to Ukraine's unity, security guarantees, and upholding international law, noting that Russia's refusal to cease fire threatens European security and that Putin will only negotiate if war no longer yields gains. French President Emmanuel Macron has joined a virtual meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, chaired by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Macron participated from his summer residence in southern France. That came following Washington's summit with US President Donald Trump, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, and European leaders, where Trump assured Zelensky that the US would support Ukraine's security in any peace deal with Russia, though details remain unclear. And Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev has said that the so-called Coalition of the Willing failed to outplay US President Donald Trump on his home turf during recent Ukraine negotiations in Washington. Medvedev criticized European leaders for their support of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House and questioned what promises Zelensky would make upon returning home. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. Egypt dispatches its 18th humanitarian aid convoy to Gaza. Qatar describes the latest Gaza ceasefire proposal as the best available option. And the Russian and American presidents support ongoing direct talks between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube. Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.